Hey everyone, cassydraws here and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be giving you tips and tricks for creating pet portraits and things I have learned along the way in my own art journey. Before we get started, a big shout out to our channel sponsors, Chartpak, Grumbacker, and Molotov. Thank you for supporting my work both here on YouTube and on Twitch. Their links can be found in the description box below or by visiting my website, cassydraws.com. Now without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about in today's video is references and how to choose a good reference for a pet portrait painting. To start off, normally I will have a conversation with my client, and I definitely recommend doing this to get a better idea of the vision and requests that they are hoping for in their painting. Do they want something a little bit more simple and elegant, or do they want something a little bit more adventurous and fun? So once I have a better idea of what the client is hoping for and the personality of the pet, I can go ahead and I can choose a reference a heck of a lot easier. I know at times it can be very overwhelming, especially if you have a client that has a lot of photos that they are sending to you. So using that knowledge that you have of what they're looking for, you can kind of omit ones that just don't speak to you right off the bat. So typically I will end up crossing them off or I will delete them and I will only focus on the ones that are kind of speaking to me. If I can't decide strictly on one reference, I will send, let's say, 3 to the client and I will say, here's what I am thinking of. Here are the ones that I like best. Which one do you feel is best suited to you and your pet? And that way they can kind of narrow it down for you. But normally what I look for in my references, and of course everyone is going to paint differently and have different styles, but normally I look for a front-facing or a 3/4 view for my pet portraits. And I just like this style. I think they are simple and elegant, very classy. They work well in a frame, and it allows you to capture all of those beautiful details of this animal, and it is the most recognizable for the client. Now, of course, if they pick a sort of more adventurous, like full body, in a background scene type painting, completely different experience. But in terms of headshots and sort of bust up portraits, that's normally what I gravitate towards, and my clients as well. In addition to composition, so the front-facing or 3/4 view, another important aspect of choosing a reference would be the lighting of the reference. Now, if you get lucky, there are times where you are given a wonderful reference compositionally, but also in terms of lighting as well. It's a well-lit area that allows you to see all of the features on your pet. And it has happened, but most times I am having to reference at least 2 photographs, one for composition and one for lighting as well. So don't be shy in using more than one reference. I know sometimes it's a little bit of a disconnect in our brain. We kind of have to combine them together in our minds, but that's typically what works best for me, since chances of getting one that has both usually sometimes doesn't happen. So the minor shift in lighting, whether it's more of a red or orange bulb or it's a gloomy day outside, can actually shift the color and the information in the photo and make the pet actually look different than it does in real life. So fur can be a little bit darker, feathers can be a different shade of a color. So by having something that is naturally lit and you can see all of that information, makes it a lot easier to put it down onto canvas. So while I was recording this video, this just came through my mind and I thought, oh, I need to let them know. This is something that I just dealt with and was super important, but also very difficult. I was approached by a client who wanted a pet portrait, but unfortunately their pet was no longer with us. And the photographs that they had available were not the best quality to get the information I needed from it to create an accurate portrait. And so there are times where we have to piece together a reference as well. So I was talking about combining composition and lighting, but there are times where we don't really have a picture to work from and we kind of just have to guess. And so what I did, it was actually Kaylee, the black Labrador I made the black fur tutorial for. I ended up taking a composition and look of a chocolate Labrador, an English Lab that had a much larger head, and then I took a photo of a black Labrador for the coloring of the fur, the markings, the shadows, the highlights, and I actually combined those references together along with researching the breed as well and what they typically look like. So a female chocolate Lab or a male black Labrador, what do do they look like? A boxer, a Persian cat, or whatever the animal may be. What does that breed typically look like? And we can kind of gather that information, combine it with references that we have, the ones that they also provided, Google images as well, and kind of combine all of that information together to create an accurate pet portrait. And of course, I always say obtain your client's approval for this as well. Be as honest but as sensitive as possible and say, hey, these photos I'm really trying to work from, but they're really not working. I don't have enough information here. Do you mind if I do this A, B, and C? And see what they say. And ultimately, it's up to them and their wishes and their thoughts. But that was just a little tidbit that I thought of and I wanted to share with you guys, because that happens a lot. And sometimes we're a little bit like, oh crap, like, what do I do? How do I navigate this? So hopefully that helps. All right, so up until this point, we have talked about composition. So front-facing or three-quarter, classic, adventurous, whatever their needs are. I've talked about lighting, so getting a good reference with lighting or combining two together or creating a reference all on your own from the various information available to you. The next thing I would like to talk about is color swatching. So a lot of times, when I start pet portraits, before I even start touching brush to canvas, I will actually color swatch on palette paper separate off to the side as a little practice or sort of exercise. And this saves a lot of time, energy, and paint for me. So rather than getting frustrated while I'm trying to paint, I'm in the mood, I'm like, I got painting to do, I'm excited, and then not being able to create the color, beforehand, I will match all of the colors that I need to my reference, and my brain and my muscles kind of remember the steps it took to make that color. But if you have a difficult time with this, or it's been a while between your swatching session and your actual paint session, you can write a color chart or a color ledger just on the side of some palette paper, some old cardboard, whatever it may be, and actually write out the colors that you use to make that color and a rough percentage. So for example, if I wanted to make a specific kind of brown, I might say, okay, I used 50% burnt umber, a little bit of burnt sienna, some white, and a little bit of black. And it doesn't have to be accurate, but it's enough to kind of jog your memory of, oh yeah, that's how I made this color. So with this particular portrait, this tortoiseshell cat, there was a lot of color switching. There was a lot of confetti. There was like one brush stroke here, one brush stroke here of different colors. And it was very challenging and difficult. But by doing the color swatching, I kind of already had an idea of the colors that I needed, the layers that I needed to do them in, and the steps. So as much information as you can have kind of off to the side, I think is very, very helpful, and something that a lot of artists don't do. I find, at least with painting, this is very popular in the watercolor world, colored pencil world, as well as Copic or marker world as well. So a lot of artists you'll see already have a chart, pastels too actually, of colors and what they look like, how they dried, and we can kind of do that for, let's say, acrylic as well, and preparing for your portraits. So hopefully that's a little tidbit that's helpful too, especially with like brindle or like really difficult fur patterns. Remembering how to make those colors, especially in between sessions, is very, very important. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the importance of the eyes for the subject in the painting. And of course, this is just my opinion, but in my opinion, the eyes are the most important aspect aside from composition and lighting. They are the most important aspects of a painting, especially a pet portrait. It is the area that, from my experience, the clients hone in on right away. It is the very first thing that they always comment on about the eyes and the likeness that they carry to their family member. And so I say always devote a little bit extra time to getting those eyes just right, whether it be the shape or the color, the expression. I was going to have these as two different points in this video, but I think they kind of go hand in hand, that the expression of the subject really does come through the eyes and usually the mouth. So we all know the look of a very excitable dog. The eyes are large and round and the tongue is hanging out. And that together, we really get an idea of, oh my gosh, that dog is excited, or they just did, 10 laps around the park and they're exhausted, So those really kind of shine through and they're very, very important. So devote a little bit of extra time towards them. And I promise you it will make a world of difference and your client will love it. The last thing that I want to talk about in today's video is actually more of the business side of pet portraits rather than the actual painting of one. And over the last 4 years, I have definitely learned the importance of having a contract or terms of service that I can provide my client before I even start working on the sketch and the painting process. By having a contract in terms of service, this basically is just outlining your rules and your guidelines and what your client can expect from you, but also what you expect from the client. And I always make sure that I get written approval from the client that they have read through these contracts in terms of service and they agree to the terms. And this is basically just covering you legally so that if you ever had any issues with your clients, you have something, proof and evidence that they have okayed everything and they acknowledged it at the very beginning of this process. Now, for my business in particular, I always require a deposit before I start working on your painting. And so usually it's around 25% of the total. And so this is going to cover my initial startup supplies. So that could be your canvas, that could be the paint that I need, any extra brushes or any special materials that I'm including in the portrait. So I always take around 25% up front. Normally, I will want half of the invoice paid at the halfway point of the painting. And then, of course, paid in full at the very end. I have seen a lot of artists get burned at the very end of the process. They have trusted that the client will pay and they end up shipping the item to the customer and never receive payment. The customer ghosts them, never pays them, and they are out a pet portrait. And I would hate to see that happen to anyone. So make sure you cover yourself. Make sure you have these sort of plans in place that protect you. And even if you only get half of the payment, if they stop messaging you and ghosting you and you end up with half of the payment, at least you had some form of income and payment for it, and rather than nothing at all. So keep that in mind. And if you have any questions about this, please ask me in the comments down below. I would love to make this into a fuller video of actually running your art business and things I have learned. So please let me down below in the comments know what you'd like to see in that future video. But keep that in mind. Please research terms of service and contracts and make sure you cover yourself. It's super, super important. Alright everyone, that is it for today's video. I so hope that you enjoyed. I thoroughly enjoy making these videos for you all, so thank you for your support and thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe as it helps our channel grow, and I appreciate all of your support so far, and I can't wait to see where this journey takes us. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to visit cassydraws.com for my portfolio and my web store. Thank you guys, see you in the next one.